After more than 2 decades of what I believed was a stable, predictable marriage, my entire reality collapsed in a single quiet evening that didn't involve shouting, thrown plates, or dramatic scenes. Just a calm confession delivered across a carefully prepared dinner table. She told me she had been unfaithful, said it casually, almost proudly, and followed it with the words that changed everything. She would do it again without hesitation. I expected my chest to tighten, my hands to shake, my voice to crack, but none of that happened. Instead, I finished my meal in silence, watching her eyes search my face for a reaction that never came. My stillness confused her more than anger ever could. She wanted chaos, wanted proof that I was broken, desperate, emotional, still controllable. What she didn't understand was that calm can be more dangerous than rage, because calm means decisions have already been made. My life, the one I had spent years building brick by brick, had already begun shifting beneath her feet, even if she couldn't feel it yet. I had spent years being the quiet one, the reliable one, the man who paid the bills, planned the future, kept everything running smoothly while believing loyalty was mutual. In that moment, as I stood at the sink rinsing my plate like it was any other night, I realized that silence can be a weapon when it's backed by preparation. There was no argument, no dramatic confrontation, no threats. Just a simple understanding that the marriage she thought she controlled had already ended in my mind long before she ever opened her mouth to confess. I had always lived a structured life, built on routines and predictability, believing consistency was the same thing as security. I worked in corporate finance, managing budgets and long-term planning for a regional industrial firm, spending years building stability for a family I believed shared the same values. We had raised 2 children into adulthood, paid off a comfortable home earlier than planned, and created the image of a successful, dependable household. From the outside, everything looked solid. Inside, things had been unraveling quietly for a long time. There were signs I chose to ignore, patterns I explained away, instincts I buried under logic. Late nights, emotional distance, sudden changes in behavior, unexplained expenses. None of it felt dramatic enough to confront, so I did what I always did. I observed, documented, and waited. I didn't accuse, didn't argue, didn't beg for reassurance. I gathered information, secured records, protected assets, and prepared contingency plans the same way I handled corporate risk management. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I refused to be blindsided. When her confession finally came, it didn't shock me, it confirmed what I already suspected. That's why my reaction was calm. Not because I didn't care, but because I had already accepted the truth long before she admitted it. Emotional reactions belong to people who are unprepared. I was not unprepared. I was simply done pretending. The morning after her confession, I broke the routines that had defined our marriage for years. No coffee, no small talk, no shared rituals. Instead of performing the role of the devoted husband, I put on professional clothes, gathered my documents, and walked out as if it were any other workday. The shift was subtle but deliberate. Silence can be louder than confrontation when it's intentional. She didn't understand what was happening at first. Confusion turned into irritation, irritation into panic. The first locked account felt like a technical error to her. The second felt like coincidence. By the third, fear set in. What she didn't realize was that I wasn't destroying anything. I was simply removing my participation. I wasn't punishing her. I was detaching. Financial systems, subscriptions, automatic payments, shared access, all of it had been built on my silent management for years. When that management stopped, her world began to destabilize in small, quiet ways that couldn't be blamed on emotion or drama. No screaming, no arguments, no scenes. Just systems failing one by one, routines collapsing, and control slipping through her fingers without a single raised voice from me. Control doesn't disappear in explosions. It disappears in silence when the person holding it lets go. While she spiraled emotionally, I moved methodically. Legal consultations, financial restructuring, asset protection, evidence organization, all done quietly, professionally, and without confrontation. I didn't seek revenge, I sought structure. Documentation replaced emotion. Strategy replaced reaction. The marriage had ended, and now the process of dismantling it had begun. I chose legal clarity over emotional chaos, evidence over accusations, preparation over confrontation. Everything I did was slow, deliberate, and clean. There were no threats, no ultimatums, no dramatic speeches, only actions. People confuse calm with weakness, but calm is often the clearest sign of resolve. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I was removing her ability to hurt me. The systems that once supported our shared life became individual structures, separating quietly and efficiently, just like a business dissolution rather than a domestic collapse. The more emotional she became, the calmer I stayed, because emotions create mistakes and mistakes create leverage. I refused to give her either. As the legal process unfolded, more truths surfaced, truths that went far beyond a single act of betrayal. Years of deception, hidden financial behavior, secret relationships, and long-term dishonesty emerged through records, documentation, and evidence. What had once looked like a stable marriage was revealed to be a carefully maintained illusion. The deeper I went, the clearer it became that this wasn't a moment of weakness on her part. It was a pattern. A long-standing lifestyle built on manipulation, secrecy, and entitlement. The person I thought I had married no longer existed, if she ever truly had. This wasn't just betrayal, it was identity collapse. The marriage wasn't falling apart, it had already been hollow for years. I had simply stopped holding it together. The most painful truth didn't come from infidelity or finances, but from discovery, proof that one of the children I had raised, loved, protected, and supported was not biologically mine. It rewrote decades of memories in an instant. Every birthday, every school event, every bedtime story, every scraped knee and late-night conversation suddenly carried a different weight. Biology shifted, but love did not. Blood didn't change the years of presence, care, sacrifice, and devotion. I didn't stop being a father because of a lab report. I didn't stop loving my child because of genetics. But the betrayal behind that secret cut deeper than anything else. It wasn't just dishonesty, it was theft of truth, theft of choice, theft of reality. Years of my life had been lived inside a lie I never consented to. That kind of deception doesn't break hearts, it fractures identity. When the truth reached my children, something unexpected happened: clarity. There was anger, grief, confusion, but there was also loyalty, understanding, and strength. They didn't see me as the man who lost a marriage, they saw me as the man who protected himself without destroying them. The bonds we built didn't weaken, they solidified. The family structure changed, but the relationships remained. I didn't manipulate them, didn't poison them against their mother, didn't weaponize the truth. I let them decide for themselves. Integrity speaks louder than explanation. Over time, they chose stability over chaos, truth over excuses, accountability over denial. Not because I demanded it, but because consistency creates trust, and trust creates loyalty. As the legal system processed the collapse of the marriage, the consequences became unavoidable. Not through cruelty, but through reality. Social circles shifted, financial pressure mounted, support systems disappeared. People who once smiled politely began distancing themselves. Reputation, once protected by appearances, dissolved under truth. I didn't orchestrate it, I simply stepped out of the way and allowed reality to do its work. Lies require constant maintenance. Truth doesn't. The structure she had built her identity on couldn't survive exposure. And I didn't have to push, gravity did the work. The courtroom was not dramatic, it was clinical. Facts, evidence, documentation, records, timelines. No theatrics, no emotional appeals, no sympathy performances, just proof. The past was presented piece by piece, and the narrative collapsed under its own weight. Responsibility was assigned. Consequences followed. The marriage ended not with shouting, but with a judge's calm voice and the finality of legal language. Closure doesn't always feel emotional. Sometimes it feels quiet, procedural, and strangely peaceful. The chapter didn't end with anger. It ended with certainty. When it was over, life became smaller, simpler, quieter. No tension, no emotional volatility, no walking on eggshells. A modest home, predictable routines, honest relationships, peace replaced performance, control replaced chaos. I didn't feel empty, I felt free. For the first time in decades, my life belonged to me alone. Not to a marriage, not to appearances, not to obligation, not to maintenance of illusions. Just mine. Freedom doesn't arrive loudly. It arrives in silence, in stability, in quiet mornings, in calm evenings, in the absence of conflict. It arrives when you stop carrying someone else's lies as your burden. Now my life is not dramatic, and that's the greatest victory of all. No manipulation, no fear, no uncertainty, no emotional instability, just clarity, structure, peace, and self-respect. The past no longer controls me. The betrayal no longer defines me. The marriage no longer owns me. I didn't rebuild my life with anger. I rebuilt it with boundaries, discipline, and truth. And the most powerful part of the entire story is this: I didn't destroy anything. I simply stopped holding together what was never real in the first place. Life after the divorce didn't arrive with fireworks or dramatic reinvention. It arrived quietly, in the form of still mornings, predictable evenings, and a calm that felt unfamiliar at first, like silence after years of noise. I moved into a smaller home in a quieter neighborhood, not because I had to, but because I wanted simplicity instead of symbolism. No echoing hallways filled with old memories, no rooms haunted by arguments, no furniture chosen to impress visitors. Everything in the house had purpose, everything had function, nothing existed to perform for anyone else. I woke up early, not from anxiety but from habit, and the mornings felt different, lighter, slower, grounded. Coffee tasted better. Silence felt peaceful instead of tense. I no longer checked my phone with a sense of dread. There were no unpredictable moods waiting for me, no emotional negotiations, no psychological landmines. The absence of chaos became the new normal. I didn't feel lonely, I felt stable. And stability, I learned, is more valuable than excitement when you've lived too long in emotional turbulence disguised as love. The relationship with my children evolved into something deeper and more honest than it had ever been before. Without the filter of a failing marriage, conversations became real. Vulnerability replaced politeness. Truth replaced performance. We talked about fear, betrayal, trust, boundaries, and self-respect, not as abstract concepts but as lived experiences. They didn't see me as broken. They saw me as someone who chose dignity over destruction. And that mattered more than any narrative I could have tried to control. The child who wasn't biologically mine never felt like anything other than my daughter. Blood never defined our bond, presence did. Years of consistency cannot be erased by a lab result. Love doesn't dissolve because of genetics. It's built through time, sacrifice, protection, and showing up when it matters. That truth became the foundation of our relationship going forward. Nothing was hidden anymore. Nothing was pretend. Everything was real. The woman who once shared my life slowly faded into the background, not through hatred but through distance. I stopped tracking her struggles, stopped asking about her circumstances, stopped measuring my progress against her decline. Indifference replaced anger, and indifference is the real ending of attachment. I didn't need closure conversations or emotional confrontations. Closure came through detachment. When someone no longer controls your emotions, your decisions, your reactions, or your sense of self, they no longer have power over your life. I didn't wish her harm and I didn't wish her success. I simply stopped wishing anything at all. Her story was no longer part of mine, and that separation felt cleaner than forgiveness because it wasn't emotional, it was structural. Boundaries replaced bitterness. Distance replaced resentment. Silence replaced conflict. I began to understand that betrayal doesn't just break trust, it reveals truth. It strips away illusion and forces clarity. The marriage didn't fail in one moment. It failed slowly, quietly, invisibly over years of small compromises and ignored instincts. The confession wasn't the collapse, it was the exposure. The collapse had already happened. I had simply been living inside the ruins without realizing it. That realization changed how I saw relationships, loyalty, and responsibility. Love without honesty isn't love, it's performance. Commitment without accountability isn't commitment, it's convenience. Partnership without respect isn't partnership, it's control. Those lessons didn't make me bitter, they made me precise. I no longer romanticized stability. I valued transparency. I no longer confused loyalty with endurance. I valued mutual integrity. The future I was building wasn't based on fantasy, it was based on clarity. Work became something different too. Not an escape, not a refuge, not a distraction, just a job, a structured part of life, not the center of identity. I invested more in health, routine, and personal stability. Exercise became discipline, not punishment. Sleep became protection, not recovery. Silence became nourishment, not emptiness. I stopped chasing validation, stopped proving worth, stopped performing competence for approval. I already knew who I was. I had tested myself under pressure, betrayal, loss, and uncertainty, and I had survived without losing my character. That gave me a quiet confidence no title ever could. I didn't need admiration. I didn't need recognition. I needed peace, and I had it. Relationships with others shifted naturally. Some people drifted away, people who were attached to the old version of me, the married version, the accommodating version, the predictable version. Others grew closer, people who valued honesty, boundaries, and emotional stability. I learned that not every connection is meant to survive transformation. Some people only know how to relate to the version of you that benefits them. When you change, they disappear. That isn't loss, it's alignment. The people who stayed didn't stay because of obligation, they stayed because of respect. And that made every remaining relationship feel cleaner, stronger, and more real. I stopped seeing the past as something stolen from me and started seeing it as something that trained me. Years of patience taught me discipline. Years of silence taught me restraint. Years of observation taught me clarity. Years of compromise taught me boundaries. Even betrayal had a purpose, it forced growth I never would have chosen voluntarily. Pain became instruction. Loss became education. Collapse became transformation. I didn't romanticize suffering, but I respected what it taught me. It sharpened my judgment, refined my standards, and redefined my priorities. The man I became was stronger, calmer, clearer, and more grounded than the man I had been before the marriage ended. The future no longer felt like something I needed to plan aggressively. It felt open, flexible, unpressured. I didn't need to rush into new relationships, new commitments, new identities. I had time, I had stability, I had choice. I could build slowly, intentionally, honestly. No illusions, no urgency, no fear of being alone. Solitude didn't scare me, emptiness did, and my life wasn't empty anymore. It was full of structure, peace, routine, purpose, and meaningful connection. That kind of fullness doesn't depend on romance. It depends on self-respect. Sometimes, late at night, I would reflect on how easily everything could have gone differently if I had reacted emotionally instead of strategically, explosively instead of calmly, impulsively instead of deliberately. Anger would have cost me clarity. Rage would have cost me leverage. Chaos would have cost me control. But patience gave me power. Silence gave me advantage. Preparation gave me freedom. The absence of drama wasn't weakness, it was strength refined. People underestimate quiet people because they mistake calm for compliance. They mistake stillness for submission. They mistake silence for fear. I had learned the difference, and that knowledge became armor. I didn't rebuild my life to prove anything to anyone. Not to my ex-partner, not to my children, not to society, not to myself. I rebuilt it because it needed rebuilding, because it was necessary. Because living inside lies is a slow form of self-destruction. Because peace is not passive, it's constructed. Because dignity doesn't announce itself, it's practiced. Because freedom doesn't arrive through escape, it arrives through structure. The life I live now isn't impressive, dramatic, or flashy, but it's mine. It's honest, it's stable, it's quiet, it's real. And that is worth more than any illusion of happiness I ever had before.